This afternoon, I will be your host as we briefly discuss the topic of collaboration in this Transformation of Community series. My name is Alex TD, and this is a look on the surface. We previously discussed the process of inclusion and how we might better find those with whom it would be beneficial to include in our group, our community, our movement, our organizations, our business, what have you. We also discussed how inclusion is a very simple precursor to what is often thought of as a community or a group or a movement or any other collective. That's not to say that there's no reason or no purpose for them being together, but we haven't quite gotten to that step in regards to the inclusion piece that we began with. Now that we have gone over that piece, that step, if you will, we're now going to learn about collaboration and where the co-experience with one another begins to develop, formulate, craft itself into whatever purpose or direction that is behind the vision for why we've included all of these others. Collaboration, as most of us know, is something akin to the class or group project when we were in school. Or even simpler, it could be from an example taken from your family household. There's multiple individuals in a household or in your group class. How many times did an adult figure say to the children to do some kind of action? You are included in that family. And part of the purpose for being part of the family is to have a hand in caretaking the family as a whole. So be it chores, cleaning your own room, taking the trash out, whatever the case might be. Excuse me. We can see from these examples how these individuals are part of a group and their efforts have a hand in the overall well-being of that group. And this is part of the essence of collaboration. Whereas before, when I repeatedly emphasized the individualized nature of inclusion in a community, we're not necessarily engaging and interacting with one another towards a common goal or a common purpose. And they're not necessarily concerned with the well-being of one another or even the community that they're a part of. So something as simple as a household or a class group project, we can then begin to recognize the differentiation that occurs when multiple individuals, while seemingly may be very different from one another when, let's call it, let's say, bound by a common purpose, bound by a common vision, regardless of their individual personalities, regardless of their individual motives, there's still the ability to express one's efforts and focus towards that common vision, towards that common purpose. I think that it is often taken for granted that when we collaborate with others, that it's going to be like like a magic get together. Like there's some kind of magic that will make everyone get along. A magic that will erase all errors and issues. But we know this not to be the case. How do we know this? Let's take a look at long-term relationships, and particularly marriages. Again, we have two individuals, but they have the idea of coming together. Unfortunately, the way that things currently are reflected in the world is that our society glamorizes these long-term relationships to be the answer for any gaps in our own individual lives. And the piece that's taken for granted, where we fail as individuals, is to effectively collaborate with another. Even in a two-way relationship, that takes work. That takes effort, deliberateness. And well, we can let the results of modern divorce rates speak for themselves, just how willing many are, I should say unwilling many are, to work, to put in the effort, to deliberately create a direction, a vision, a strategy for collaborating with one another. Now, naturally, I'm not talking about relationships where things are just horrendous, things that no one should have to be exposed to. Those are their own special cases. I'm not talking about those. I do think it is of importance to recognize that just because something is challenging or difficult or stressful, that's not a good reason to jump the gun and assume that it means that things will not be okay, that things will not be worked out. This is another place where we fail to effectively collaborate. I wish there were a simpler way, perhaps some sort of procedural formula that could make it so we could assess at any given point in time whether or not things will be okay and whether or not they will work. The reason that this kind of checklist doesn't exist is because it is an ongoing and ever-changing and evolving process. Who you get into a relationship with, who you meet or become friends with or get married to, you do not know the full extent of that individual. You may know many things about them. You may know about their boundaries, aka their likes, their dislikes, their preferences, and so on and so forth. But how many of us can really say, even a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, that we know the changes that are taking place inside of someone else's head, inside of their body, inside of their emotions? I don't know about you, but I feel that that would be a rather arduous task in and of itself. You'd have your work cut out for you for a lifetime. You would need to constantly be checking in with everyone you knew. But we all know life's not like that. And so what do? We go about our lives. We sit and we talk over dinner or coffee or drinks for some. And we catch up. Even the language catching up. It's because we know that something has occurred without us being present. And so we recraft that connection in those moments. Now, once again, looking in the direction of collaboration once again, we can begin to see how critical communication is for collaboration to work. It doesn't have to be every second or every minute or every hour of every day, of every week, of every month, of every season. Because as we previously looked at and explored, that's simply not possible. So how then can we create effective collaboration? Well, if communication is so critical, then perhaps crafting a strategy with which those who are involved can communicate with one another. That might be certain days of the week, at certain times. Something to the effect of open office hours, perhaps. And whoever is holding the space for that communication, it would be good to know also that not everyone will have the need to arrive or have the need to communicate something all those times, every time. If we, for example, establish certain days of the week with which we can communicate with others in our collaborative group, some of those individuals may only need one of those days. Some of those individuals may need all of those days. And depending on what happens in life, while some of those individuals may need one, some, or all of those days to communicate, they may not be able to communicate at those days or times at all. Take, for example, the last couple of weeks. In my absence, I have some catching up to do. I have some communications that were foregone. And while, yes, I have several bits and pieces that I collaborate and communicate on with others in my network, I couldn't rightly expect myself to be available or present at those times. And such is life. One thing I like to call it moving at the speed of life. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's quick, other times it's kind of meandering. Sometimes it's low and mellow, and sometimes it's curvaceous and stressful. However life may go. It's not to say that I can always rectify living my life that way, because I have my own ideas, and I like things to go certain ways, especially when I put time into planning something. But it is worth recognizing at any given point that regardless of whether or not you or I are available to communicate, just like you would with an old friend, when you are able, catch up, rekindle the communication. Rekindling that communication will do, that is part of the secret sauce. It will do wonders for your capacity to collaborate with others, regardless of their personalities, regardless of their hopes, dreams, visions, motivations, etc. Just remember, do not cling to the expectations that you have for your group to collaborate. That'll be all for now. I thank you for your time. My name is Alex TD, and this has been A Look on the Surface.